morning, I'd like to introduce our Eshinni, Kakushinni service guest speaker, Ms. Mernie Miyasato-Crawford. She graduated from Roosevelt High School and received an MA from the University of Hawaii in social work, specializing in gerontology. Mernie is currently the medical social work service chief at Triplet Army Medical Center and is active in the community and is also vice chair of Project Dharma. Married to husband David, they have a son and daughter. For more on her background, please read the Kailua Mitra. Mernie.
Thank you, Reverend Bird, again, and Prudence, and everybody for having me. Thank you so much. What an honor. And if I get away today without doing one more klutzy thing, it'll be a miracle. As my mother would say, I'm glad actually I didn't bring her. She'd be mortified. Anyway, the opportunity is just so awesome. Thank you so much, Reverend Bird. Not that it was so memorable, but it is exactly dusted off the shelf what I said a couple of years ago. Now I realize that Mo'ili on this very same occasion. Eshinni Day is a very important day, and it really forced me to stop and think and reflect what it means to be, in this life, a Buddhist woman. Eshinni and Kakushinni both set high bar for us as women, for, building the foundations, helping Shinran build the foundations of Jodo Shinshu and the Hongwanji movement as women all those years ago. And certainly as important as Shinran was to the Sangha. I certainly don't aspire to those levels of achievement, but I use this event really, hopefully, to take it to heart, to think about and reflect. And I must say, I came away feeling more pride than I realized I have been bearing. And to be honest, I guess, as a start, I want to say that I can't always say I felt that way growing up. To be even more honest, I can't even say I always knew what it meant to be a Buddhist, let alone feel any kind of sense of pride. And even now, in my older age, it's still a work in progress. Nonetheless, through circumstances of birth, family, life circumstances, and experience, and yes, maybe a little bit of knowledge finally through all those years of Dharma school and supposedly being a Dharma school teacher with our children, and maturity, I feel like I have come to a level of groundedness in my Buddhism. And as I take stock, I realize there are kind of 4 pillars as to why that is and how I frame it for myself personally. The first is family. As is the case for many of my sansei, 3rd generation Japanese, growing up in Hawaii and on the mainland, going to temple, attending Dharma school, participating in the activities, the bon dance, the mochitsuki, all the things that surround going to temple. That was just part of growing up. We didn't even question it. It was just you had to go. So we went. And it was as much as going to regular school. You just went on Sunday, right? And just as much as going to the dentist and the doctor, we go to temple. So except for the years during my elementary school days when we lived in Los Angeles, our faith and its community were a vital part of our family routine, regardless. They were the center of our family social circle, and at least, I never questioned, nor did I pay any kind of conscious attention. Purely through the powers of immersion and osmosis, I learned though, and I was shaped by the Dharma as it was taught. And as I observed it in its very, very basic sense. The golden chain of love, kindness, mutuality, respect, compassion. These were all values, at least my parents strove to teach us anyway. One would think we didn't have to be Buddhists to hopefully have parents wanting to instill those kinds of values, but they were effectively reinforced every Sunday, every event, every gathering of the Sangha. So fast forward 25 years, David and I strove to do the same. with our children, Nick and Maya, who are both on the mainland. They're young adults, not quite launched, but they're not here. And the other challenge was we were biracial and, how would you say that, Sensei? Interfaith. Because he grew up Southern Baptist, not really born in the blood, but it was there as part of his identity. So again, we really sought through the basic fundamental values that we would hope are common to all faiths. And not a small part of my pride in being a Buddhist is the knowledge that these core values are sourced, at least for me, from my Jodo Shinshu Dharma. And equally, they were reinforced by my husband David's Christian beliefs. And hopefully it made us both better people and better parents. Now, if we would say the proof of that would be that Nick and Maya are actively attending some kind of temple, or we can't say that, but we hope at the end of the day they are both very good people. And after all, that's what we feel is the measure. So family is certainly the beginning and the abiding part of where Buddhism informs my life. So the second part is temple. When you look around, this is such a beautiful facility. It's just amazing, welcoming and just really beautiful. I'm talking about more than that, more than the infrastructure. When our family returned to Honolulu from LA and from being on the Big Island, we also returned to Jikoen Hongwanji Temple. Some of you may know, instead of being called Kalihi Hongwanji, it was Jikoen by definition because it had its roots in the Okinawan community as much as it did in the Hongwanji movement. And that was our home temple. My grandfather, my father's father, Mernie Miyasato, was intimately tied to both the Okinawan community locally, and he was a key to the survival of each through the World War II, and all the impacts that even here, of course, in Hawaii were felt. Ji-Chang, he was seamlessly a leader in both communities. He, with Jikoen serving as both the purpose and the platform from which he did great works in service of both. He helped raise financial and in-kind contributions to Okinawa, as you know, was just almost wholly devastated through the war, more than equally as much as mainland Japan was. And the local Okinawan community was hugely mobilized in their behalf. To include, he never talked about it when he was alive, but after he died and into the current generations, we've heard the story of the 7 local Okinawan men, one of whom was my Ji-Chang, who mobilized monies and the military to acquire 550 pigs from the West Coast, and they rode along on the ship all across the Pacific to deliver those pigs to Okinawa. And to this day, any of us go to Okinawa and you eat pork in Okinawa, it's from that gene pool of the surviving pigs. Literally, it is still forever in this state seen as really saving the soul of Okinawa in the aftermath. And that's how close the ties are between Hawaii, Okinawa, Uchinanchu, and Japan. So that was my Ji-Chang. And during the war, he served as lay minister when the resident minister, Reverend Yoshimori, was interned in the war. So as such, I saw how the Dharma informs and connects to the wider society in small ways and big ways. I grew up seeing the temple as a place where Dharma is activated for the larger good. Fast forward again to the present time. I feel so much pride that our Jodo Shinshu leadership, Reverend Bert and his fellow ministers and our legislative assembly and our bishops have taken very public stands, to me very courageous stands, in advocacy for issues that I think are just absolutely those of social justice. Back in the day, I don't know, I'm old enough to remember way back when, well, not that long ago, but there was a huge fight, regarding marriage equality and LGBTQ rights, and it was singularly our Jodo Shinshu community that came out with statements of support and not deciding to sit on the sideline and be silent. And even more recently, as we've been faced with a lot of these other very, to me, alarming stands being taken, that are xenophobic and highly discriminatory, I do believe our Jodo Shinshu also has taken stands proudly to support what we believe is right for the larger good of Hawaii and actually the globe. So temple connecting to community is huge. Another reason why I really realize Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism in general has informed my life is in my career. As was mentioned, I'm a social worker. I'm a clinical licensed social worker, but have been practicing in healthcare all these years, most recently at Tripler. And throughout this career, mainly health-based, I've been dealing with people in crisis, medical, psychiatric, surgical crises, in illness, injury, and loss. My staff and I, we encounter patients and families at the end of their lives or facing life-limiting illnesses, diagnoses. Often, especially with our active duty or our veteran population, they're wholly estranged or geographically distanced from any kind of support system. And then they're caught up in this maze of modern so-called healthcare. I call it industry because it's very, very difficult to navigate and maneuver and know how to ensure that what you want is what is achieved on your behalf when you're at the mercy of hospitals and systems and bureaucracies. So the skills taught me in my training as a social work clinician, again, many, many years ago, and in fact, the school I attended at Case Western in Cleveland at that time was only just beginning to move out of a real psychotherapeutic type focus and into more systems-based learning. And thank goodness, because I think I couldn't do the work that we've done all these years without that level of skill set of really being able to see that it is through positive relationships with people through which we can then effect positive change. And it is always from a perspective of the person in the environment that you're connecting a perspective that you start with the individual, but you are the change agent in which to help that person understand and navigate the limits and the options and the hard choices that must be made on their behalf. So you're connecting individual need with external realities and limitations. And that to me is the basic core of what I have come, or as I acquired in my social work training. It's founded, that a variety of therapeutic approaches could be applied, and I say to my staff, in this type of work, it's one thing to know how to be able to really get therapeutic, as you say, with a client, but it's more than that. You have to also be able to do, again, that macro level work of moving them with gain their direct understanding that you're there to help them, but also to turn and pivot to, we have some hard decisions to make, like how how to escalate or not escalate care. What is it going to mean if mom or a brother or a husband is going to be wholly dependent and can take care at home? What about the fact that, okay, he's a veteran, but he's not eligible for VA to pay for any of the care that is going to be needed day in, day out? All these kinds of things you have to, again, influence, change. And so therefore the therapeutic approaches most appealing to me and that I find most helpful to guide the clients, patients, and my staff have been those that emphasize the links between one's values and beliefs and one's thoughts and behaviors. Less going internally, intrapsychically, but again, what can we do now to frame what you're feeling into action? Normal human beings encountering abnormal stressors and circumstances is the basic framework versus one of thinking in terms of problem and psychopathology. So again, as a Jodo Shinshu follower, I find that more and more those tenets at the core of my professional self and my professional orientation are actually very much mirroring those of our faith. It's founded on a perspective that says we are all whole to begin with. We are who we are as we are. Our actions and thoughts both shape and are shaped by others. The interconnectedness cannot be denied. The ripple effect of one action on others cannot be denied. And that is the perspective that we come to every client, every patient, and every situation professionally as well. So every single day in my work, I'm aware of this synergy. And again, it brings me strength because it's all copacetic. It's all in sync. It just flows and it really strengthens one and the other. And finally, regarding my Buddhism, I think about our modern life and times. Every day, as I've reflected, as I said, at least to my horror, and again, this is my personal belief, and despite the optimism that when I was growing up in the 60s, I thought the pendulum swings always this way to progress. And I thought there was no going back to days where it wasn't, Well, shock and horror, it of course does, and we're going way now this other side. And it is shocking. And I know we speak a lot, at least in my own little bubble of people that I speak with, as we all live in these bubbles now, we bemoan that every day, Again, you just, from my point of view, you just see that larger society is devolving, oftentimes in the reverse direction. And in that reversal, you see a retreat from science, you see a retreat from scientific thought, you see a retreat from facts in general, In fact, I think some people would claim to say there is no such thing as facts. Somehow it's just all what you choose to believe, I guess. And many people are acting and expressing themselves out of that fear-based perspective, and that perspective that anything perceived to be different is not good, or is to be feared, or is to be shunted off. And so much energy and effort is spent on denying and delegitimatizing any input that would contradict that point of view. It's just locked. There's like a closed system of belief in that now. So now more than ever, I feel the need for and a surge of pride in our Jodo Shinshu Sangha, as it stands out amongst, I would feel, as the most progressive of faiths. As a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, I do not have to deny anything that is modern or different. I do not have to do mental contortions to deconflict what I learn in the classroom, and what I hear in Dharma talks. I do not have to compartmentalize or rationalize who I am with what I believe in and how I express my faith. Instead, I can choose to embrace new ideas, different people, diverse cultures and beliefs with reason, rationality, and judgment. It's all one. It's not either or. And by asking myself, what supports all living beings and all non-living things? Science, globalism, environmentalism, multiculturalism, equality of the sexes, equality of sexual orientation, equality of gender identity, and diversity are all there to be acknowledged and incorporated into daily life practices versus denied against all evidence to the contrary. This I know as a Buddhist, and this I know because I am a Buddhist. And as a sidebar, I would just share, I had this big discussion with my daughter, who's Honpa Black, Japanese, Okinawan, and she's having a heck of a time understanding, who am I? So she grew up here. Now she's been in Baltimore, outside DC, Maryland with my Crawford side family, so wholly immersed in African American culture. And same thing, what she didn't know here about the African American side, now she's up there, she doesn't understand what's going on from the other side. Poor thing. And she had this whole discussion with her boyfriend, who seems to be the one, who knows, who's African American, but not highly super religious, and very open, and they had this huge discussion about, and she was telling me, he's saying that if he doesn't even go to church, they don't go to church, that's not a big thing, but he's telling me that if we stay together, if we have children, he would want to maybe have them baptized. And she says, what is up with that? That shows he's just not going to be open. I said, okay, take a deep breath. If anything we've taught you, and if your dad, who comes to temple every time we say you need to, he's there at the bondan slinging, bento lunch as much as anybody else, and he's there slinging huli chicken as much as anybody else. It's not an issue. I said, if there's anything we taught you, Maya, it's get back to our basic Dharma, which says, what's wrong with that? Who are you? You're the one now who's closed-minded and rigid in setting up this framework that Corey is not allowed to have his own wondering about how he wants to have faith enter his life. That's not Buddhist. So it's like, what? Basically, it all comes down to that. And in that moment, as we're struggling to have this conversation with her, it just, again, struck me again. Jodo Shinshu, faith, parent, career, wife, married to some dude who's totally different. I mean, it all helps me live this life. And in the end, there was a clarity of what I was hoping I was conveying, and I'm hoping she would take in to understand that this is us. It's as Reverend Burke was just saying about something else, Sonoma. It is what it is. That's us. It just is what it is. So as I deal with these kinds of stressors, as I encounter them within my own family, my work, my neighborhood, my circle, my marriage, our Dharma, I don't expect to find concrete answers as to what's right and what's wrong. what to do and what not to do. Instead, I find clarity, strength, comfort, reaffirmation from which I make my own choices. Many a times, those choices are just dead wrong also. But so is so, right? I'm taking the personal responsibility, and in our Jodo Shinshu faith, there is that too. Day in, day out, it grounds and centers me, and I wish that Eshinni and Kakushinni, her daughter, could know that their work 800 years ago laid the conditions for this to be the case. For all I've gained as a very imperfect follower on my own path, I'm forever grateful that they did. So in Gasho, I thank you again for allowing me to share this with you. It's entirely therapeutic again, and I should be invited back every 2 years someplace to say it again, because it's a very good reminder. Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Mernie, we really appreciated your talk. Thank you very much.